The Brand Journalism Advantage bonus episode. Hey, brand journalism community, I'm Phoebe Chung-Chua. This is a special bonus episode of the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast. I talk with podcaster Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire. And as an added bonus, you can watch this video interview at thinklikeajournalist.com. Type John in the search box at the top right corner, and you'll find this video and all the resources mentioned in this episode. Enjoy.
Every question that you can ask me about why my podcast is how it is because of that one answer. My perfect listener, Jimmy.
The Brand Journalism Advantage, the podcast that teaches the power of storytelling to increase business by attracting, engaging, and influencing consumers. Now, it's time to think like a journalist with your host, brand journalist Phoebe Chung-Chua.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Chung-Chua. Thanks for tuning in. I am so thrilled to be doing this next interview. I'm sitting here with the man, Entrepreneur on Fire, Lee Dumas.
I'm excited to be here. I'm prepared to ignite, Phoebe.
Oh, of course you're prepared to ignite. Would he be prepared to do anything else?
Never.
We're going to combust right here. So this is really cool. We've got a beautiful view of the bay. All kinds of sailboats out there. Let me just set the stage for you because I'll tell you what, this man's doing it right. And he has a really fascinating background. So tell us a little bit about your life story, where it all began, and how you ended up right here in San Diego overlooking the bay.
Well, I'm really glad where the story has brought me, for sure. So to rewind back to the early days, I grew up in the state of Maine, spent the first 18 years of my life there. Went to college in Rhode Island on an Army ROTC scholarship. So I spent 4 years training as a cadet, and then in 2002 I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army, which was the first class to be commissioned post 9/11. So we knew that we were really going to be in for some serious business, and sure enough, within a year, I was on my first tour of duty in Iraq for 13 months as a platoon leader in charge of 16 men and 4 tanks, and I spent that entire tour of duty in various places within Iraq, Fallujah, Al-Ramadi, Habaniya. Pretty big in the news at that time because it was during the bloodiest year of the entire war. So it was pretty intense for sure. But I did get back safe and sound myself. I spent the next three years finishing out my active duty requirement. And then I was a civilian all of a sudden. And I was kind of thrust at 26 years old into the civilian world where I didn't really know what I was going to do. So I tried a bunch of different things. I tried law school. I hated it, so I quit after just one semester. I tried corporate finance with John Hancock out of Boston, which had its pros and cons for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then I ended up walking out on that job as well. It just wasn't something I wanted to continue forward in. And then I found myself out here in San Diego the first time with no job, no friends, just knew this is a beautiful part of the country, wanted to explore it. So I got into real estate for a couple of years and ended up getting a job back in my home state for the first time in 13 years. I returned home to Maine full time. And I was in commercial real estate in Maine for a solid year and a half, when I actually did have my aha moment for Entrepreneur on Fire, which is has turned into a 7-day-a-week podcast where I interview today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs and share their journey. And that business has turned into a very location-independent lifestyle where I can generate income and run my business from anywhere in the world that has an internet connection. So my girlfriend, who was living with me out in Maine, who I had met out here my first round in San Diego, who was born and raised in San Diego, Kate, was missing home, missing family. Her sister had just had a baby, so she was now an aunt. She had a niece now. So we decided to make the move back to San Diego in about the middle of 2013. So we've been here for a little over a year now for my second time in San Diego, and things are going pretty well.
And that, let me just tell you, come on, that's an understatement. Things are going fabulous with him. I've sat down and had tea here. He is an amazing person. And I mean, from the inside out, all that you're doing, the amount that John puts out on the web on a daily basis is literally incredible. Aren't you the only podcaster doing 7 days a week? Am I correct?
The only podcast that's interviewing inspiring and successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week.
Yeah, that's tough. And of course, some people may or may not be familiar with podcasting. There's still sort of a niche group of people who are diving into this, learning more about it. What do you say is the future for podcasting? Obviously, you've really laid stake in it, so you feel that it's definitely the right career path.
So podcasting has really been on an interesting and exciting journey since it was introduced back in 2005. Now, I didn't hear of podcasting personally until 2009. Podcasting had a very interesting first handful of years. A lot of people got in it back then, and they were really enjoying podcasting for what it was, but it never caught on mainstream. And there's one major reason for that. And in 2010, the world hit a tipping point. And I mean the world because this is now a global phenomenon where over 50% of people had a smartphone. And now it's even a much higher percentage than that. So now people went from having a really difficult time hearing about what a podcast might be to now having access to podcasting in their pocket, wherever they were, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So in 2010, podcasting started to take off. By the time I got into the game in 2012, that's when I launched Entrepreneur on Fire just about 2 years ago, things had really taken off. And iTunes was getting over 500 million visitors on a monthly basis. Podcasting specifically was taken off mainstream with some major comedians like Adam Carolla diving into it, Mark Maron, Jim Cramer, Susie Orman, CNBC. Big names were getting into podcasting. And what they were doing, which was brilliant, was repurposing some of their already content. Like Susie Orman does a TV show and a radio show. Why not take that content and repurpose it in the form of a podcast to expand her demographic? So she's one of the top-ranked business podcasts out there, getting hundreds of thousands of listens a month that she wouldn't have gotten if she didn't repurpose it, this content she's already created. So there's some major reasons why a lot of people are going into podcasting. One of my favorite things, Phoebe, is you don't have to say no to listening to a podcast to say yes to other things, meaning that you can be driving in your car listening to a podcast. You can be running along the bay here.
That would be me. Yeah.
Or rollerblading, as Phoebe was very recently.
Yes.
Listening to a podcast. And you can be doing these things while you're doing other things, folding laundry, the dishes, whatever it might be. Like I cook every day here, and while I'm preparing my meal, I'm listening to a podcast because I can do these things in the kind of multitask, so to speak. So it's this medium of a way to really connect with people in an intimate and engaged way. That's a reason why podcasting has exploded. I've staked my claim here, and I'm excited.
So I do the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast, and we interview thought leaders in marketing, former journalists, and many of these very, very large corporations are turning to brand journalism. They're turning to new media marketing, whether it be dabbling in podcasting, launching their Vimeo, their YouTube channels. I mean, they really are becoming what I like to say, every company equals a media company. They're becoming that media company and surpassing, in some cases, the numbers that, publications, especially a smaller print publication, would reach. So when you look at that big picture of it from a business side, because obviously you launched a brand, you're very, very inspiring. There's a business behind that. What would you say to the businesses who are listening and watching? What would you tell them about getting into this space, whether it is podcasting? I know you're getting ready to launch some videos, and that's sort of a new endeavor for you. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would echo your statement, which I love, which every company is a media company or should be becoming one very quickly. Otherwise, they're into some pretty serious trouble because, this is how we are really going forward as companies in this day and age. We need to be out there. We need to be consumable on many different channels within many different demographics. Radio was king for a very long time. Now your local radio station, has that antenna. It's getting out to a certain region. This right here behind me, when I launch a podcast every single day, is within the snap of a fingers, is sent out literally to the world. And my podcast specifically gets downloaded in over 145 countries every single day to the tune of 829,000 listens just last month. We've done over 8.1 million listens since we launched.
Woo-hoo.
These are real numbers of people, and this is what's critical. These are people, and now what I lovingly refer to as Fire Nation, who are choosing to go to see my podcast, see what it's about, subscribe, download, and then listen. So that listener is an incredibly targeted, valuable listener. And you're doing the same things when you're creating a YouTube channel. People are choosing to subscribe to your YouTube channel and come back to you for your content, not just flicking on the TV or the radio and seeing what's streaming at that time. Plus, it's the evergreen content, Phoebe. People hear Entrepreneur on Fire for the very first time every single day, and they will email me and say, John, I can't believe I haven't heard of the show before. I'm going back to episode 1, and I'm going to be listening to every single episode till I catch up, which, by the way, we're at 683 right now.
Wow.
So they have a long ways to catch up with a new one going live every single day. But that's the evergreen content of podcasting. That's amazing. And the same thing with YouTube channels. People find a YouTube channel they like, and it's just evergreen content. They can go back and listen and watch all of those previous that are just listed right there, all those previous videos in your channel. Where, again, TV and radio, they have their place and they're powerful. But once that radio ad spot's gone, or once that disc jockey has said his speech, it's disappeared. That was a one-time event that happened, it's gone. Podcasting is evergreen. Video within YouTube, Vimeo, Wistia is evergreen, and people are really taking advantage of building massive communities and content around their niche, their passion, just like you're doing with brand journalism.
Your predictions, the year's 2025. Tell me where you think TV news is going to be, where you think podcasting will be, how you think this will relate to businesses, because of course you take sponsors on your show. They come on because you have this targeted audience, and that's in essence what a lot of businesses and corporations need to learn, that there are other ways other than chasing after the media, trying to send that press release and trying to get on quote unquote traditional media. Now, I'm not saying that traditional media is dead.
Nope.
I don't believe that. I believe there's a combination, and in using it together, that collaborative effect can actually raise a company's revenue significantly. So your predictions for 2025, where are we going to be with everything?
So where I truly believe we're going, and this is what I've seen podcasting has opened people's eyes up, is on-demand, targeted content. And so I can choose when I want to watch, when I want to listen, to what I want to watch, when I want to listen to it. And that's what podcasting brings to you. So when you're driving in the car and you get home at night and you're loving that content, you don't want to sit in the car with the engine still running for the next 20 minutes because, it's either you listen to it now or it's gone. You press that pause button on that podcast or on that news, whatever it might be. Then you go into your house, spend time with your friends, your family, you have dinner, and then things quiet down, and then maybe decide to press the play button again because it's on demand. And it's that niche content. You can choose exactly what you want. I mean, maybe you want to specifically figure out more about brand journalism. So you're going to go directly to Phoebe. You're not going to have to go to this wide array and get kind of a vague overview. It's really niched and it's specific. So that's where I see everything going.
So, John, a lot of people think about podcasting and they consider it and then they go, you know what, too much work. You've got it dialed in. Tell us the steps, and I know you can do this like that.
Snap of the fingers. There's really 8 steps, and this might actually help too. We do a free live podcast workshop every week where I go into detail for an hour about this. So if people want to learn more, they can go there.
Yeah, it's cool. I've been on it.
Yeah. Podcastersparadise.com. So what I would just say is, listen, there's basically 8 steps to the podcasting process. Number 1, you're recording your audio. You're literally hitting a red button and you're recording into it. Number 2, you're done. You're going to edit. Add the intros, any sponsorships, add the outros. Number 3, you're going to export that audio, which is basically like saving a Word document. You're actually going to be saving like an MP3. So you're exporting that MP3. Number 4, you tag that MP3, and that just means like you're just adding to that actual MP3 a name, a title, copyright, description, and then artwork as well. Number 5, upload that MP3 to your media host, which I use Libsyn, LIBSYN.com, short for Liberated Syndication. And that's where you actually host the media file. Then you're going to be scheduling when you want that to be released, because you can choose when, which is why we went on our 14-day vacation. We could schedule out all of them to be released every single day, hands-free. Then number 7, you're going to publish that actual episode, so it's going to be ready to go live. And then 8 is just submitting it to the directories, like in iTunes. That's the 8-step process. We go into depth on my live podcast workshops. but it's really that simple.
How long does it take between the time you submit to, say, an iTunes directory, if you're trying to time that launch and let everybody know? Are you just kind of in a waiting period?
So if you're actually launching your podcast for the very first time, and this is the first episode that's going live on this particular podcast show, it typically takes between 48 to 72 hours after you submit it to iTunes for it to be approved. They actually have a review process, so it always varies. It's a matter of how much backlog they have, but that's the average. I just submitted one on Thursday and it was approved on Tuesday. So it's working days. So 2 to 4 working days. It's about that. So that's really key to kind of focus in on, because you definitely want to be planning that launch with it. But the key thing to note is every podcast you upload after you've been accepted to iTunes, after that, it's all automated. You never do it again.
Now, you came out with interviews, and podcasts can be anything. They can be interviews, they can be how-tos, they can be simply you and talking to a video podcast, for instance, talking to the camera, or just an audio. There is producing that's important in that, though. Having some sort of a flow, understanding where you're going. How were you able to come up with that? I'm particularly interested because we have a lot of transitioning journalists who do have journalism as a background. You didn't have journalism as a background.
Zero online presence when I first launched. I had zero broadcasting experience in any way, shape, and form, but I did have logistics experience. As a military officer, I knew how to plan. I knew how to set schedules. I knew how to stick to a disciplined, regimented schedule, and that was huge for me. So a lot of people were telling me when I first launched, John, you can't do a 7-day-a-week show. You're never gonna have enough time to do all these interviews. Well, not only do I do a 7-day-a-week show every week, I do it 1 day a week. On Mondays, I plan 8 back-to-back interviews on the hour, every hour. Those are long days, Phoebe. I have to bring the heat the whole time. But I'll tell you, every Monday, I'm done at the end of the day. I've completed all my interviews. I call it batching. I wake up the next morning, and the rest of the week is my oyster.
Yeah, and they're about half hour, 40 minutes, somewhere around there,
Exactly.
right? And so tell us a little bit about the producing end of it, though. Where did the questions come from? Not having a background in this, how did you decide the flow of your show?
It's a great question, and there's an amazing answer for it that a lot of people, when they hear this answer, they just have this sense of calm that comes over them, because they realize, well, that's so easy. You picture the one perfect listener for your show, not a target demographic, one perfect listener, and you create that avatar. You sit down and you write 2 pages of who that person is. And I could go into in depth about my avatar, Jimmy. I won't now, but I could go into details about this person, what he does, where he works, kids, wife, everything. I know everything about him. And I produce my show for Jimmy. So when I know my avatar, that one perfect listener, as dialed in as I know it, every question that you could ask me right now, my answer is going to be, well, I just went back and I read about my avatar and I realized what he wanted. I knew what Jimmy wanted to hear from my guests. He wanted to hear their journeys, their failures, their aha moments. Jimmy wanted to listen when he was driving to work, so I kept it at about 30 to 35 minutes because that's the average commute time. Jimmy wanted it consistently because he needed this inspiration every single day, so I did it 7 days a week. Every question that you can ask me about why my podcast is how it is because of that one answer. My perfect listener, Jimmy.
I love that, because that is exactly what we do in brand journalism. You look at the end user, you define who that end user is, you define what they're looking for, why are they online, why are they trying to find this information, and then you target everything to that. So whether you're producing a podcast, an actual radio show, TV show, a video news story, whatever it is, you want that coming back to answer those questions and to always be serving that end user. So that is absolutely perfect. Tell me a little bit more about where you see yourself going in the future. Is San Diego your home? I know you can take your business anywhere. Tell us something that you're not telling everybody on your show. We want the good stuff. And is the baby effect anywhere? You got to listen to his podcast. He talks about the baby effect all the time.
The baby effect is real. I have over 500 documented cases of it, but it's, again, another story. But no, good question about the future, because Kate and I are incredibly happy here in San Diego. We have an amazing setup here. We've invested a lot of time, energy, and resources to kind of set up the exact situation that really allows us to produce the kind of content we want to at a consistent enough level and be happy about where we're at. So, her family's here, my family's not, but it's just one plane ride away. I don't really need to be super close to family. Like, to me, talking on the phone or FaceTime is cool.
That's good. Yeah.
San Diego is definitely our home for the foreseeable future, but we do have that freedom that you talked about. So, before the kids start coming and before we really settle down, possibly we could do a year somewhere like, Argentina, Chile, potentially even Europe. I mean, the world is our oyster. When we went out to Europe, I visited a friend, Jason Van Orden, who has a 2-year-old. He just moved out there with his wife 6 months ago just to live in Paris for 8 months. I was just like, we're just going to live there for 8 months. And they did, because he just has internet, and that's how he runs his business. So we could see ourselves doing something like that. The future professionally for me is really just going to be this. And this is, again, something that I think is very powerful for the listeners. Everything that I've done with Entrepreneur on Fire has been from listening to my audience. I grew my audience, then I just listened to them. They told me, Phoebe, what they were struggling with, what their pain points were, what their needs and desires were. Then I created the solution for them. One of those solutions was Podcaster's Paradise, which is now the largest podcasting community in the world with over 1,200 members, and has generated we're at $945,000 in revenue as of today, this morning, since we launched October 31st, 2013. So well less than a year old. It's already almost $1 million community that I've created, all from listening to my audience. So my future holds me continuing to listen to my audience, hearing what they want, what they need, and then continuing to create that solution for them, and then offering it to them in a form of a product, service, or community.
What makes you the happiest?
This is a great question, and I have a very specific answer for it. In 2 words, the ripple effect. But what I mean by that is when I get an email from somebody who says, John, your show inspired me to incredible lengths, that I actually took action and made this. And now I just received an email today from somebody who said that they were so inspired by what I created. And I just want you to know, John, that you inspired me to create this. I created it, and I've inspired somebody else now. And to me, I'm removed from that third party, but my show had that ripple effect, that kind of 6 degrees of separation, where now that person that's inspired that sent him that email is going to go off and create something, and then so on and so forth. And all of these people past this one level may have never heard of me before, would have never and will never hear of me, but they're still off doing amazing things.
Okay, so that's so cool. So I got to come clean. I listened to him. I can't remember how I found you. I found him. I've been on TV in San Diego a long time. He's new to the area. Found John, started listening, sent him a long email because I'm a reporter and I wanted him to have all the background. I gave him the Cliff Notes. I said, if you want to skip around, you can skip around and get to the point. And I picked his brain because I finally knew it's time to launch a podcast for my business and my brand. So I wanted to come to the best. So that's why I'm here today. And we've created a friendship, and it's really fascinating. And you have inspired me. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I get those emails too,
right,
from people on Facebook and fans who know me from a long time in the San Diego market. And it's really cool when you realize, wow, I helped this business. I've done stories on authors, interviewed some incredible people in my lifetime. And when you can pass that on, that, giving that information from one person to the next and it travels on, it's just such a cool feeling. So I share that with you.
All right. High five.
Yes. Let's ignite. Yes. Oh, you're awesome. I loved it. Give me a hug.
Hugs.
Awesome. This is the man. You got to listen to his podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire.
Prepare to ignite.
That's right. We're getting ready to combust right now. Thanks for watching. I'm Phoebe Chong-Chua.
Subscribe to the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast and be the media. Now, go think like a journalist.
Hey everyone, it's Phoebe Chung-Chua. If you enjoy this free podcast, please subscribe on iTunes and leave a rating and review. Your support is very important to us. It helps the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast continue to bring more valuable resources to help you gain a competitive advantage. And don't forget to join our email list for weekly updates and new media marketing tips. Just visit thinklikeajournalist.com. Join the list and browse our show recaps, articles, videos, and webinars. Now go think like a journalist. Brand Journalism Community, remember you can watch the video interview at thinklikeajournalist.com. Type John in the search box at the top right corner and you'll find the video interview and all the resources mentioned in this episode.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneur on Fire. And when I'm not preparing to ignite, I'm listening to the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast with Phoebe.